Welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Jeremy Miller. Every week, I chat with fascinating people from all walks of life in order to bring you knowledge, inspiration, and insight. If you enjoy the show, you can support it by subscribing, leaving a review, and sharing it with a friend. This is the Jeremy Miller Podcast. Travis Osborne, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Stoked to finally have you, man. I feel like it's been a long time in the making.
We've had, I think at this point, we've had probably about 15 to 20 long run podcasts that just did not make the air.
I mean, I feel like that's what a long run conversation is, really.
100%. Unless we do a long run at your pace, and then it's normally me going, and you're asking me questions like, yeah, that's what we did last weekend.
Dude, you always make this joke that you're like some old guy, but you're not even that old.
No, I just turned 35 actually.
That was
last
recently,
week, right? Yeah, or 2 weeks ago. So yeah, on the 14th.
Congrats. How do you feel about that?
I feel old. No, I feel good, man. Honestly, I feel like I'm in the best shape of my life. I feel I'm in a really good place mentally. I just feel like, man, like this is what 35 is supposed to feel like. I feel great about it.
That's cool. Do you do a lot of like blood work or anything like that?
Not as much as I probably should. But I did actually, I don't know if you remember maybe 4 months ago, it was during summer, I guess. So 4 months ago, I ended up getting really, really sick.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I had, really bad food poisoning and it was not a good situation at all. I had to go to the hospital. It was like not ideal.
You sent me a voice message, I think, and you sound like you're dying. I'm like, are you okay?
I felt like I was dying. I actually thought, and it was like, everything was coming down at the same time. I ended up getting this like horrible, I had Shigella dysentery, like not an ideal, thing to get.
What is that?
Foodborne illness. It's a bacteria that they find in like shellfish. It's present in a lot of third world countries. So oddly enough, I was just here in Austin and I grabbed fish from the supermarket, cooked it that night. Clearly I did not cook it long enough and woke up the next day and just sick. So that lasted for like 2 weeks. I ended up losing 11 pounds. I mean, I looked like I was emaciated. I felt terrible, but did a lot of blood work during that time. So I actually got all my blood work done and all my labs were within normal limits and everything. Nice. And oddly enough, I thought like at that time, like getting my testosterone checked and like, kind of everything, I thought everything was going to be low. Everything was within normal limits and was all good.
That's crazy.
I know, right?
Especially during that time like that.
Yeah, dude, it was wild.
Have you gotten it checked like since then to see if it's gone up even more? Like everything's improved?
I haven't, and I need to. So maybe before the end of the year, I'll probably try to set an appointment and get that done. But if anybody, you have a big audience. If anybody has a good suggestion for where to go to get blood work, that'd be awesome.
Dude, I just did mine. I think it was like October, maybe. Yeah, it was like right before I did my last marathon, and I'd never done blood work before, but I used Merrick Health.
Yeah,
have you heard of them?
Yeah.
You like pick and choose. It's like this big like menu of things you want to get tested, and you just pick and choose whatever you want. And then I think you go to LabCorp to do the testing. It's like super simple.
Yeah, they do the draw.
I recommend that.
Yeah. They sent you the results, right? I remember seeing you had a video on Instagram. You were kind of going through them.
Yeah.
Wasn't your testosterone was a little bit low, wasn't it?
Testosterone was good. I think it was even slightly above average.
Oh, nice.
But my estrogen was like 0.
Or
near 0. It was like nothing.
Dude, it's too manly.
Dude, yeah. Yeah. No, I think it's from running so much.
For sure.
Yeah.
It is interesting, and like a lot of endurance athletes, they end up either having low testosterone or like high markers for inflammation and stuff, and they just don't realize like, the harder that you are in your body just generates an inflammatory response, right? It's like when you run a marathon and you're pushing the pace the whole time, you're in that zone 4, zone 5, like the whole 2.5 hours, 3 hours. I mean, you get sick afterwards, or you can end up with that, runner's flu after a big event.
Have you had that after any of the races you've done?
No, I felt kind of shitty after the first half marathon that I did. And I think that was just like, just me kind of being inexperienced and going after it. And what was kind of weird is like, my last mile on that half marathon was by far my fastest. I felt like I had so much more in the tank, but I just didn't really have like a good set plan or a set point. So I just finished like, balls to the wall and ended. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, my legs. Next morning I woke up, I could barely walk, all of the above.
I feel like it's been a minute since you've done any races. When was the last one you did?
It has been since that half that I ran in Southern California. So it's been 2 years, I guess.
Was that the OC?
The OC half. Okay. You ran that the last year, right?
Yeah, it was fun.
That's a great track.
Yeah, it's beautiful out there.
Dude, it's so nice. And I mean, that area is just, they have the best weather, they have the best waves. It's a good little spot to be. I've got some friends that live out there. So
heck yeah. Do you have any races like coming up? I know you run consistently, but are you like training for anything specific?
I'm not. I was actually thinking about that the other day when I was, looking at my week, and I use Jeff Cunningham as a coach here in Austin. He sends me workouts, but I'm not training for anything. He's always kind of pushing me like, pick a race. And I'm like, I don't know. And my schedule with work and everything is kind of always up and down. But I just like being able to feel fit, right? And just this idea of like, being able to run really far and being able to build an engine, but then also like being able to lift weights and being able to like maintain my body weight. So for me, those are kind of the staples.
I love that. Do you feel like it's hard to stay motivated to like train every day when you have like a race or a specific goal and it's just kind of this like big generalized thing of just like, I just want to feel good and look good? I
don't know. I think for me, especially like over the past 2 years, I think I started running 3 years ago really, but the first year that I was doing it, it was all motivation, right? It was just like I'm watching videos. I'm seeing, guys like Nick Bear and Cameron Haynes and, I forgot the guy, Ryan something. He lives out in,
is it Ryan Hall?
Yeah, Ryan Hall. Dude, that guy's a beast, right? Dude. He's like he's the American record holder, I think, in the marathon or the half. And now he is just like a freak, huge dude. And he's still, running and massive engine. So anyway, those guys, that was like super inspiring. And I was like, I want to dive into this. So I started doing that. And at that point, it was all motivation. And then I think slowly but surely I realized that like that motivation just like waxes and wanes, dude. And one week you're feeling like you're on top of the world and you've got all this motivation. You got David Goggins in the back of your mind, like, carry the boats, and you're just out there running 100 miles. And then the next week you're just like, oh, I'm not motivated, man. Work's picking up and all this stuff's going on in my life, so I'm running less and I'm taking care of myself less. I shifted because I realized that was happening so much, right? That I really shifted to just really trying to be disciplined and making it part of my, my routine, my weekly routine. And I sit down on Sunday nights and I kind of map out my week. I plan my training schedule. I plan my work schedule around my training schedule. And I've like adapted a lot of that stuff over the past couple of years. It was not like that before. But when I started doing that and really just focusing on the discipline aspect and like just making it part of my daily routine, I don't rely on motivation anymore. Now it's just consistency and discipline.
That's huge. That's interesting. You structure your work schedule around your training schedule. Yeah. Rather than, I think most people do the opposite.
It used to not be that way, right? And I started realizing that I was not, I don't know a good way to explain this. I just realized that I was putting my physical health, my emotional health, my mental health on the back burner as we were growing our business. And my business partner, Alex, and I own an anesthesia group. And as we started to like build and develop the group, my work schedule got busier and busier. And the first thing to go, what's always the first thing to go? I get busy, I'm not going to work out today. I get busy, I'm not going to run today. I get busy, I'm not going to meditate today. I get busy, I'm not going to spend time with my wife or go to happy hour with friends or like, do things that are for me. And I started neglecting all of that and just putting work. And when I was doing that, I was actually performing, I felt like at a lower level in the business and in my day-to-day stuff at work. And I think my wife, she runs her own business and she works with caregivers and does a lot of training for people living with dementia and Alzheimer's, and she consults with facilities and all that stuff. And she also preaches like every day to all of her clients that you have to be able to take care of yourself before you can fully take care of somebody else, right? It's that whole idea of the oxygen mask, right? You know, put the oxygen mask on yourself first so that you can maintain your oxygen, and then put it on your kid next to you, right? So when I started filling up my own cup first, I realized that I had so much more to fill and to give back to the business, to my other relationships, to, you know, friends, to family, to all these other people. And for me, that started off with carving that time out on purpose for myself with my workouts, with my, you know, my me time, and then filling in work outside of that. And people will, you know, I can see people like listening to this right now going, rolling their eyes, be like, well, it must be nice.
Of course.
You don't have to go to work at a certain time. Like, well, that just means that I wake up earlier, right? And sometimes I've got to be in the operating room at 6:30, 6 in the morning, right? And when that happens, I will wake up at 4:30 and I'll get a run in the morning, or I'll get a quick lift in, or I might just stretch, or I might skip everything altogether in the morning, but I make sure I prioritize it at the end of the day. And I block that hour of time for myself to either lift or run or stretch or whatever I end up doing.
Yeah, it's all about your priorities. Like, what are you putting at the top of your list? You got to get done every day. It's like if fitness and your health isn't at the top, it's like it's not going to happen. 100%. It's like because it's so easy to make excuses when those things pop up of like, oh, I got to work overtime, or I got to take my kids to this or whatever. It's
I mean, I completely agree, and that whole idea of like must be nice. Well, it must be nice, Jeremy. You're a fitness influencer. You've got all these like all you do is run, right? That's your job. It's like, well, no, that's not all you do. You're running your own business. You're doing your own things. Like you do have to make time for it, but you prioritize your health, your fitness, your running, and your training. And you put that into a box, right? And then outside of that box, you fill in the rest.
Right.
I think everybody's probably heard the story of the professor that gets up in front of the class and they put they have the sand in like all the rocks that they put in the jar, right? It's like, well, if you're not putting those rocks or the blocks in first and taking care of that, the sand won't fit, right? So, that I've really shifted my mindset to that over probably the past 6 months to a year. I've seen a lot more benefit.
That's cool. Yeah, you haven't always been a self-employed.
I have not.
Business owner.
No, man, no. I got out of my anesthesia training in 2015, and from 2015 up until the start of 2021, or until December of 2020, I worked for other people. I had W-2 jobs. I worked for big groups. I worked for small groups. I worked for a single, business owner. So yeah, kind of got to see a little bit of everything.
What made you want to study anesthesia, or take that path to anesthesia? I don't know. Is that a degree or what? Okay.
Yeah. So I'll give you kind of a full breakdown. So I'm a certified registered nurse anesthetist or a CRNA as people like to refer to it, because that's a lot easier to say, right? And then the second question I always get is, well, what's the difference between that and an anesthesiologist? And really, we basically took two different paths to get to a very similar endpoint. Mm-hmm. We provide clinical anesthesia at the bedside every day. That's what CRNAs do, right? So we provide anesthesia services, and I'm talking about just CRNAs in general, not our business. We provide anesthesia services to patients. So anything that has to do with anesthesia, whether that's a regional nerve block, whether that's sedation services, whether that's general anesthesia that people think about for, they needed to get their gallbladder out, right? Have a laparoscopic cholecystectomy or their appendix taken out. You have to go all the way off to sleep. We put you to sleep. We place a breathing tube for that procedure. We make sure that you are asleep and unconscious the whole time. We're treating your pain, your hemodynamics. You're making sure that you are safe and monitoring your vital signs every breath you take, every breath that's delivered from the ventilator, all that stuff. And then at the end of the procedure, emerge you from the anesthetic, wake you back up and take you to the recovery room, and then discharge you out of our care to one of the nurses that's in the recovery room.
Dang. What made you want to go down this path? Did you have any inspirations?
Yeah. So, my parents both, I think a lot of people my age, their parents, a lot that at least I've run into, their main thing was like, you got to have a profession, right? You got to be a doctor, lawyer, professor, you know, something like that. And that's what my parents like always preached when I was growing up. Everybody around us, you know, like, you got to be a doctor, got to be a lawyer. Travis, you should be a lawyer. Travis, whatever. So, you know, I had that like always in the back of my mind. My grandmother was a nurse, and she's a badass. She's still kicking. She's 89. Dang. She just gave up her nursing license literally like 10 years ago. She was crazy. Working like one day every 2 months at this nursing home, kind of like helping out at the very end of her career. But she's awesome. And she's been a huge inspiration in my life, and really was the one that kind of like opened my eyes. Like, nursing's a great opportunity to kind of scratch that itch, get a good, get a good job out of school, and that'd be something I could do. So when I was a senior in high school, I worked like all through high school, and always liked having like my own spending money and like being able to work and do stuff. So, my mom, one of my best friend's mom worked for Austin Anesthesiology Group at the time. She was the scheduler for the entire business. And, I told her, I was like, yeah, I'd really like to get a job, like turning over ORs or helping out in one of the surgery centers around Austin. So ended up working at this place called North Austin Surgery Center. It's still there today, when I was 18. And I did it for, I think 4 or 5 months. I worked there the entire summer before I left for LSU, where I went to undergrad. And by the time I was done, I just kept gravitating to the head of the surgery table, and the head, we call that the head of the bed. And that's where anesthesia sits, and we monitor the patient, we put him to sleep and everything. I kind of kept like gravitating up there. I was like not real interested in the surgery stuff. They'd be like, oh, Travis, I'm cutting this patient open, I'm dissecting. I'm like, dude, I don't care. And I'm like, man, this is fascinating. I'm watching somebody draw up 20 cc's of medication, inject it into somebody's veins. They go all the way to sleep. They're able to like manipulate their airway, breathe for them during the case. This is so cool. Like, I mean, this is like magic, right? Yeah. So I became fixated on that, and they earn a good living, and a lot of them said, dude, you should definitely go the CRNA route. It's fantastic. So I got into LSU, and I knew immediately, and like from the get-go, I was just like, all right, I want to be a CRNA. So I kind of took the fast track to get there. I got my undergrad in my my BSN, or my Bachelor of Science in Nursing, from LSU. Moved to LSU's health science campus to finish out my nursing degree from downtown Baton Rouge, the Baton Rouge campus, to downtown New Orleans. Ended up meeting my wife. She was getting started at her for her master's degree in occupational therapy when I was in my last semester of nursing school. So we ended up meeting there, and then the rest is history.
Awesome. Dude, I think I saw some on your website. Did you do some schooling at Duke too, or is that a different thing?
Yeah, no, that was that was where I did all my anesthesia stuff. So to be a CRNA, you have to get a 4-year BSN, or a Bachelor of Science in Nursing. And then you have to work at least 2 years in ICU or some type of intensive care, where you are working as a nurse, delivering bedside nursing to critically ill patients, right? And in that time, you're learning how to think critically and how to take care of these sick patients with multiple comorbidities and multiple complex pathophysiologies. And you are developing the skill set that you don't come out of nursing school with. And you're getting to know vasoactive medications and like all these different things, and what patients look like when they're coming back from these surgeries and stuff, right? So you develop that, and in the meantime, you're applying to anesthesia schools. So at that time, I was applying to anesthesia schools. I'm working in ICU, and I get into Duke, and Duke's anesthesia training program. Now everything is a 3-year degree afterwards for nurse anesthesia. So got into to Duke's program. At the time, it was 28 months continuous. Now I believe it's 36 months, and you finish with a doctorate. I just have a master's in nursing.
Sheesh. Yeah. So how many years of school total is that?
It's between kind of 8 and 10. And if and I'm counting those 2-year minimum that you have to work in ICU. So 4 years of undergrad, 2 years minimum to work after that, and then a 3-year anesthesia residency program that you're doing. And during that time, you are literally just doing clinical anesthesia for 3 years straight.
Damn. And what does that mean?
Like you were going in and providing anesthesia services for these patients, and you're doing it with a preceptor or a clinical director or somebody looking over your shoulder, like helping you, making sure it's just like a residency program.
Yeah. Dang.
Yeah.
That's a lot of school. So how old were you when you finally got done with it, with everything?
26.
That's not too bad, I guess.
No.
You start when you're 18, 19.
Yeah, started with when I was 18 and finished when I was 26, and immediately started. I left there, and it's funny. My wife's from New Orleans, right? And she has never been in a cold climate ever, and she had never lived outside of New Orleans or Baton Rouge. So she finishes her grad school. By the time that I finished my actual work experience as a nurse, before we went up to Duke, and before we left, I was like, all right, well, you're coming with me. Like, so we get engaged, and I bring her with me up to Duke, up to Durham, North Carolina. Furthest away she'd ever lived from home. Furthest away I'd ever lived from home. And she is like, this is the coldest place I've ever been. And I remember like the second or the third year that we were there, Durham had like one of the coldest winters on record. I mean, there was a week it didn't get above like 20 degrees. Dang. And she just like looks me dead in the eye and was like, I want to go to the hottest place on earth. And I was like, really? And she was like, yeah. She's like, I cannot do this cold weather. It's not working. So we ended up moving to Scottsdale, Arizona right after. And I went out there and worked for a medium-sized anesthesia group. Met probably, the best collective group of anesthesia providers I had ever worked around. Like even outside of my training at Duke and everything, it was just like, or even including my training at Duke and everything, it's just like every person in this group, anesthesiologist or CRNA, they were just at the top of their game, dude. And everyone was expected to be at the highest level. My mentor is one of the anesthesiologists that I actually met when I first started working there. And it was just, it was a great place, man. It was really hard work. It definitely took some years off my life. I was averaging like 75 to 80 hours a week. I was taking call every other weekend, and I was doing these crazy sick old patients out in the west side, Northwest Valley in Arizona. And we, it was awesome, but I came out of that experience with really good experience. And I came out with a great resume and a really good skill set, and moved back to Austin, and kind of rest is history.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a cool story. I love that.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. It was, I can't say enough good things about the experience. What's so funny is, when I was working in Arizona, all I was thinking about was like, oh, I got to get out of here, man. Like I'm working 80 hours a week. Like this is killing me. But when I was actually there doing cases and there working, it's like, I loved it, dude. I couldn't get enough. Like it was so challenging. It was so new. I was learning how to do these like big cases, sickest patients, like, and I could just do everything myself. And I was just like, this is awesome. Like this is exactly what I was like meant to do. And I felt really good about the work I was doing. I just had no work-life balance. Dude,
I feel like you're somebody who like thrives on challenging times and like under pressure, basically. I feel like anesthesia as like a career is a very like, it's a high pressure situation all the time, I feel like.
For sure. I always tell people, and like I think a lot of other people probably say the same thing that I do that are in anesthesia. It's 99% chill. 1% is just sheer terror. Like, and it's
Sounds
also
like an airline pilot or something.
It is 100% analogous to flying a plane, right? The most dangerous part of flying a plane is taking off and the landing, right? And the most dangerous parts in anesthesia are inducing anesthesia and waking a patient up, right? So if you're thinking about, we do the same kind of pre-flight checklist. We prepare for all these emergency scenarios, just like a pilot would. Like what happens if the engine goes out? What happens if your landing gear doesn't come down? We train the exact same way. What happens if the patient has a bronchospasm? What happens if the patient has an allergic reaction? What happens if they have XYZ? So, it's a lot of that. And I always think about that saying, like, you don't, what is it? You don't rise to the level of your expectations. You fall to the level of your training, right? And I think when you have good training and you put in the reps and you put in the work, like that background knowledge is there. And when those oh shit moments and those situations arise, you just go back to it, dude. And it's wild. You just fall into this zone of like, okay, next thing I need to do, next thing I need to do. And all of a sudden you're like, you're coding somebody in the elevator that, arrested, and you're just not freaked out. You're just doing what you're trained to do. It's neat.
Have you had some like real high intense situations where like a normal person would probably like have a panic attack or like kind of shut down and just like not be able to respond?
I mean, a normal person, sure, but like anybody in anesthesia, like that's what they prepare for, right? Yeah. And that's part of the reason that training is, for CRNAs and anesthesiologists, like, that's why that training is so long and so intense. It's to make sure. It's just like being in the special forces, right? Like those guys are so dialed in that when shit hits the fan, they flip a switch and they just go into autopilot and they just take care of business. And I think that's what anesthesia creates, right? And that's what that anesthesia training sets you up for.
Yeah. What is like a typical, you don't have to go through the whole thing, but like the procedure of like, okay, somebody comes in for surgery and they're going under anesthesia. What does that look like?
So, first thing, let's say you're the patient, right? And you come in and we'll make it easy. Like you're having, elective surgery. You're getting calf implants. So
I need them.
Exactly. So
make me run faster.
So, right. So you come in and I come to see you. First thing we're going to do is like, a quick questionnaire, make sure that I'm doing an H&P or history and physical on you. Basically a head to toe assessment, ask you about your health history, meds you take, all that stuff, last time you ate and everything like that. Then from there, you pass everything that we need to your pre-flight checklist, basically, to make sure that you can board the plane. We get into the operating room. On the way to the operating room, might give you a little bit of medication just to ease your anxiety. It's like fast-acting IV Xanax, if you will, but it's quicker on, quicker off. Take you to the OR, have you scoot yourself over onto the operating room table. At that point, you've already got an IV in place. That IV is dripping some kind of like normal saline or balanced saltwater solution. And at that point, we start giving induction medications or medications to induce anesthesia. So that is like the plane taking off, right? So once we start giving you that medication, have you breathe oxygen through a mask to be able to fill up your reservoir of oxygen on board. And we want you to have as much oxygen in your lungs as possible because I'm about to put you all the way to sleep and make you apneic or make you not breathe, right? So upon that happening, you go completely to sleep. At that time, I also administer a short-acting paralytic, and that will allow me to place a breathing tube in between your vocal cords down into the start of your trachea and be able to breathe for you through the procedure. So that goes in, and we got a little fly friend that just joined us. That's basically the takeoff phase, and then at that point, switch you over to a volatile gas anesthetic. To this fly is going
distracting.
Wild.
Need Magoo to come eat him or something.
Oh man, how cool would it be if I Mr. Miyagi'd him right here, just on camera? Yeah. So then once we have you,
one quick question before you go too far.
Yeah.
Is there, going back to like the analogy of an airline pilot or like a flight, is there two people, like two anesthesiologists, or just one?
Just one.
Really?
Yeah. So some people, it depends kind of on the practice model. The way that we run our business and the way that is, I believe, the most efficient and the best way to do anesthesia is to have one person carrying out the anesthetic just to reduce cost. And it is just as safe as having two people there, in my opinion. So one person is, to answer your question, yes, one person. So that happens. You go to sleep. Once you are completely asleep, we put in what's called a laryngoscope. And that is like, kind of looks like a right angle. We slide, there's a blade end of it, and it's like not sharp, but it's like a long metal piece that goes on your tongue, and it helps us elevate your jaw or suspend your airway so that we can see down in between your vocal cords into your trachea, right? So once we see those vocal cords, we're able to place the breathing tube down in between them, and it sits right there. Now that's the placeholder. It secures your airway. There's a tiny little balloon on the other side of the vocal cords that gets inflated. That way, if you passively regurgitate any stomach contents, they don't go down into your airway after we've made you asleep or put you to sleep and allowed you to not be able to protect your airway with your normal airway reflexes. So upon that happening, we switch you over to a gas anesthetic. Now it's just the maintenance. Now we're at like autopilot. We're at cruising altitude. You are asleep. The ventilator's breathing for you the whole time, or you're breathing for yourself. Kind of depends. That's like a little bit more nuanced, but ventilator's breathing for you throughout the case. At that point, the medications that we give to induce, they don't stop pain, and we still have to treat patients' pain, right? Because the patients are the only thing that the anesthetic agent does is really, make you amnestic, make you not aware of what's going on, make you lose consciousness. So,
do you know what like the reaction is, or like what molecules are like, I don't know the right terminology, but like what is actually happening that causes you to fall asleep?
Yeah, yes and no. I can get into it. It's gonna get pretty in the weeds.
Let's go full like Huberman.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm Huberman, but so those drugs that we use, one is GABA mimetic. Think about kind of the same thing or the same pathway that alcohol works on. Slightly different way. I'm trying to draw like some comparisons for your audience because they
for me
and for you.
My monkey brain needs to understand this.
So something similar to how alcohol is working, but much stronger. And the drug I'm talking about is actually propofol. So you activate that channel, and that renders unconsciousness. That renders no memory formation. It eliminates awareness, right? So, but it doesn't do anything to produce analgesia or anti-nociceptive properties or anti-pain, right? The idea of pain is called nociception, that feeling of pain or experiencing pain. So the way we do that is by administering narcotics or non-narcotic medications that are analgesics or that are, pain preventing medications.
So even though the anesthesia makes you not aware of anything, you still have to have that anti-pain.
Exactly. Yep.
Is there like is there physical reactions that people's bodies can have?
For sure. Yeah.
So their brains aren't aware.
Yeah. If the patients are not deeply anesthetized enough, they can flinch, they can move. That is super, super rare. And we take we mitigate those risks by either making sure that the patient is deep enough or deeply anesthetized enough to not move, or we can give a paralytic, which is like a short-acting muscle paralyzer that works while you're asleep under anesthesia. So, but we still have to treat the patient's pain. We still have to treat the patient's blood pressure, heart rate. That's what we're monitoring, beat to beat, breath to breath. So people are always like, so once you put me to sleep, do you just leave? I'm like, no, I still got to fly the plane, man. Like we got to make sure that something doesn't happen.
Nap.
Yeah. Cause emergencies pop up. I mean, that is real. It's not very common, but I mean, patients like middle of the case for seemingly no reason at all become profoundly bradycardic to where we either have to start CPR or I have to give medications IV. So we're always looking, we're always treating the patient's blood pressure. We're anticipating things. We have to know where we're at in the surgery. Hey, I know that the next part of the surgery is going to be extremely painful. I need to go ahead and give this amount of fentanyl or Dilaudid or an opioid to make sure the patient is not going to experience pain when they make incision or change to the next portion of the procedure. So you kind of have to know a little bit of everything, what's going on in the room. One thing that's kind of cool about anesthesia in general is like, there's a million ways to skin a cat, dude. To do the same type of procedure in anesthesia, you could do 15 different variations of an anesthetic and all of them be right. They're just have to do with what the patient needed, right? We can do nerve blocks and pick off certain nerves that innervate somebody's entire arm. So, with a shoulder procedure, we could do an injection in their neck and block pain to that shoulder. So you could do that patient's surgery. You could do it completely with the patient awake and fully aware. Wow. But their entire shoulder would just be numb. You could also do it
like the dentist, almost like where they numb
exactly,
like one
yeah.
side of your mouth
so
or something.
the medication that they're using is a local anesthetic. And those local anesthetics, they block the conduction of neural activity through, to that area and to your brain, right? So the efferent and the afferent, delivery of that message on that neuronal, pathway, right? So we're blocking that at a certain point. And we can use an ultrasound, and then with that ultrasound, I can go in and I can deposit that local anesthetic, and it bathes those nerves and basically stops that conduction temporarily for like 12 to 72 hours. It's cool.
I can tell you're so passionate about
this.
It's
cool.
Yeah,
I really like it. And I mean, it's so funny. Like, I nerd out to this shit. Like, all my colleagues do too. Like, oh, dude, the other day I did this crazy case, and they're like, rah, rah, rah. It's like we can't even have like a regular like get together and like go out for happy hour beers without people talking about work and cases and crazy stuff. So
that's so funny. I love it though. I mean, I feel like that's you found your calling.
For sure. Yeah. No, I really love doing clinical anesthesia. I feel like I'm good at it, and I feel like I got great training. And one thing that I really like within the business is that ability to kind of pass on things that I've learned that have worked well for me and instill those into our business and some of our business practices and our teachings to, new CRNAs or anesthesiologists that join our team.
Dang. So you worked for this like medium-sized group in Scottsdale, right?
Yep.
And then you came to Austin after that, right?
Moved back to Austin. For 6 months here, I worked for a big group, a national group. They're huge. And I just wasn't the practice for me. I felt like I was going to Walmart every day, right? I felt like I was employee number 6,084, right?
Just a cog.
Cog in the wheel, dude. And I just did not appreciate the practice model at that practice. They use what I feel is an antiquated model. They have the anesthesiologist medically directing the CRNAs. Like you got to call them to put the patient to sleep. Anesthesiologist has to come in the room, watch you put someone to sleep. That's what I was alluding to earlier. It's like that is like the least efficient way to do anesthesia, because now you're paying 2 people to do the job of one. And I just didn't feel like it was a great practice model. The practice model that I worked in Arizona is actually the practice model that we use within our business. And it is just completely independent. Everybody does their own cases. The anesthesiologists do their own cases. CRNAs do their own cases. We were all there to back each other up. We all realized that we got to the very similar endpoint, just going 2 different ways. And it's very collegial, and it's what I feel like is the best method and the best way forward for anesthesia care. It's a lot less costly for hospitals and surgery centers too.
Is that experience with that like bigger company what ultimately made you be like, I got to start my own thing. I got to do my own business?
A little bit, that started planting the seeds of like, I don't like this. Like there's got to be something better out there. And then a friend hit me up and said, hey, there's somebody, real small group, here in Austin that, not even group, there's surgery center that is looking for CRNA to come work and do independent cases and all stuff. And great. That's right up my alley. So I did that, and I started working within that group or within that surgery center. And I learned a lot about how I had very differing management style and leadership ideas and ideas about how a business should be run than my boss at the time. And that at the time I felt like was so painful, and it was just so frustrating, and I hated it. And now I look back, and that was probably one of the best lessons I ever got. It was like getting an MBA in how not to run a business, or how I didn't want to run a business if I ever had my own. And I just saw all of these things that I didn't agree with. And I think a lot of that was like personality driven and management decision driven. And when I ultimately, decided with my business partner, we kind of sat down and were like, dude, like there's a better way to do this. Like, let's do it. So we sat down and we learned everything we could about anesthesia management and anesthesia running a group and what a business would actually look like. And it was just, a lot of things fell into place, got lucky a lot. I think it's interesting. The like more you prepare and the better you get at things. Like you tend to just get lucky more often. So yeah, that was what kicked us off.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That like reverse role model idea, I think it's more powerful in a lot of ways, like you said, than like having a really good role model or like a really good boss, or it could be like a parent or something who, you know, they make you feel like shit, or some friend, and it's like, that sucked. I don't ever want to have to experience that again. So it's like, it's almost more powerful, I think, to have that like bad experience in some ways.
Could completely agree.
Yeah.
I mean, and that a lot of that has guided, you know, how we've run the business, decisions that I've made within the business, the way that I try to, you know, the way that I'm talking to people and talking with people within our organization, try to make things like much more positive, much more system dependent rather than person dependent. You know, one thing that, and I saw this at all the places that I worked, before starting our own group, they always used to make fun of me at the surgery center that I worked at, because I would always be like, what is the system for this? And there wasn't a system in place. And one thing that I realized was like, you know, businesses are built on systems. And when I worked for all these other groups, there was a lot of finger pointing and like, oh, Jeremy didn't do this. Oh, Jeremy's a bad apple. Jeremy's got a shitty work ethic. Instead, it was like, no, Jeremy didn't know what to do in that situation because there was a bad system in place. It was a system failure. Ultimately, that's the business's job to make sure Jeremy doesn't fail at that or slide through the cracks or forget or omit something. It's important that the system's there to back Jeremy up. So Jeremy doesn't have to think about it. Jeremy doesn't own the business. Jeremy should be able to go there, work, do his job, close his laptop at the end of the day, and go home to his family, right? So that's one thing that Alex and I have really tried to do, is like create a system-based business.
I love that. Where did that idea come from originally? Like, was it like a podcast or a book you read, or was it just something you guys found on your own?
I think it was like a summation of everything, right? You know, I think that the first like kind of self-help guru book that I ever read was Tim Ferriss' 4-Hour Workweek.
Oh yeah.
And he implements a ton of systems in that book. And then I started reading more business development books, and I started realizing like all these guys had one thing in common. They had like system 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. Like as the business got bigger and they started doing more things, they had a system for everything. And I feel like it's just, I cannot stand when people point a finger directly at a employee or staff member, when I have this really hard time believing that people just show up to work and they're like, you know what? I want to do a shitty job today. I'm going to not do what I'm supposed to do. I think people should not have to self-govern themselves and create, you know, their own system to work within at work. Like that should be provided for them within the architecture of the business, in my opinion. So if there is a problem, I think the owners and the operators like need to take responsibility for figuring out what the system problem is that allowed that thing to happen.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. I feel like that's what makes a business last through time too, because it's like people are going to cycle in and out. You're always going to have turnover with employees and stuff, but if you can sub in another person, but that system is still in place, it's like it doesn't matter who's really doing the job. Like some people might do it better or worse, but as long as that system is there, it's like anybody can do it, really, right? For
sure. And that's not to take away anything from the people that are there, right? And I think that's like the most, because like when I had those thoughts originally, my first thought was, well, we should be able to just sub in anybody. Like the system should take care of itself. Like I've kind of, there should be this happy medium of like the system is that baseline support that people need, but then we should be hiring such good people that we are showcasing their talents and allowing them to excel within that system, right? So as long as the system is there as that background, like, okay, you're just going to keep hitting this minimum if they're just relying on the system, but then they should be operating up here because we're hiring such good people. Right. And that's, luckily, that's where we've gotten to with the business, and we just have stellar, you know, staff. It's awesome.
Cool.
Yeah.
I mean, if you sub me in there, I'd make the whole business problem. I don't know what the hell I did.
No.
That's a good way of explaining.
They're all licensed professionals. But I, you know, one book that actually like really changed my thinking on that completely was this book called Built to Sell. If anybody is thinking of starting a business, I think I've recommended it
I need to read it.
on a run. last time we ran. But, if anybody started a business, I don't think you should ever start a business looking to sell a business, but this book provides really good frameworks, and it's written in like a narrative story format. It's only like 100 pages, the easiest read on earth. But it's about this guy that has an an advertising firm. In the advertising firm, the guy was just running it like a solopreneur. And he was just telling everybody like, hey, Jackie, why didn't you get back to me about those quote or the estimates or the, proposal you sent out? And Bob, why didn't you do this? Well, it's because like he didn't have any systems in place, and he was running the business like he was just expecting everybody to do what he was doing. And it was just such a good like mental model for how to like think about working in systems and creating a scalable business. Because ultimately, in my mind, like if you're creating a business that is built to sell, quote unquote, not even looking to sell it, that means that it has scalability built into it, right? Because nobody can go buy a business that is 100% dependent on Jeremy. They can only buy a business that can live without Jeremy, or else they're buying you and the business together, right? So that was a really cool way of kind of like shifting my thinking and making it less dependent on Travis and more dependent on Celebrity Anesthesia to like be the backbone for our guys.
Yeah, I love that. I got to read that book. It sounds
dude, it's awesome. You would dig it.
Yeah, because it's I mean, I've kind of had to, in my personal stuff, is like one-on-one coaching is a good example of like it's not scalable because it relies solely on me and like the knowledge in my brain to pass on to other people. But you can turn that into a scalable business if you wanted.
100%.
Because it's like you can build out coaches or systems or whatever. Yeah, I feel like any business like. It could start as a solopreneur type of endeavor.
Yep.
I don't know, like just because this is my other experience is like doing like freelance photo and video. It's like it's me going out and doing it, but you can build in systems where you can hire other people, build out. It's all these systems. It's clicking for me.
It's all coming together.
It makes perfect sense.
No, you're exactly right. And like I would say probably 99% of businesses start as a solopreneur, like.
Right.
Or a small partnership, right? And then grow into something. Well, like what changed between and like these businesses all have this limiting factor, right? Like outside of like when you can do everything yourself, you hit that first hang up in a business. It's like, okay, Jeremy can now package and fulfill all the orders himself. But then all of a sudden, what happens when you've got 15,000 orders in a month? Well, now you've got to build out scale. You've got to hire people. You've got to be able to have a written document that says this is how we package and send out every single order that comes in. This is the note we put in there. These are the stickers we put in, whatever, right? So then now that's a system. Yeah. And now that system can be implemented by other people besides you. So I think that is the real hang up in businesses. Going from that, like that's the first step, right? And then after that first step, I think it just gets progressively more of a load as you start to scale.
What was the hardest part of like going from, okay, you're working hands-on as a W-2 employee to then making the jump to starting your own business? What was the hardest part of that?
Oh, dude.
I'm sure there was a lot.
I mean, I don't even know where to start. There were one thing that I don't think people realize or isn't as like well publicized is just the immense highs and lows that come with starting a business. I mean, it's just I've never been on more of a mental and emotional roller coaster in my life. Like I feel like I'm pretty self-aware. I'm pretty emotionally and mentally stable and strong. And still, I mean, I was just like up and down, which was nuts. I think, having to do without for a little while. And this idea of like, I was talking to my business partner the other day about this, Alex and I were having a chat and I was like, I think one thing that really separates people being able to do this versus people either not getting started or giving up quickly is the idea and the ability to defer gratification. And that is like small business 101, right? You get a business started, very few businesses are cash flow positive immediately, meaning like you are going to be like first month, you are just profiting and you have that profit there and you're actualizing it. Most businesses are negative cash flow businesses, and especially at first. So, my partner and I both didn't take a paycheck for the first 10 months of our business. Dang. And we shoveled out a ton of our own funds to like get everything started and get it going. So I think, we were still able to eat. This is not a woe is me moment, but like really changing our lifestyle, sacrificing like the lifestyle that we got used to living. Like, I mean, we were both making good money. We had very stable jobs, and you just have to be able to like keep going back and lean on your why. Why did we start this? Why am I doing this? What is my purpose here? And then really like leaning into that purpose and realizing like that's why you're really here. And that is why maybe you're here on earth. That's maybe why you're hoping to serve like a bigger thing than you. And this was the vehicle that like me and Alex were able to do that with. So I think we just leaned into that. And I did not see that coming. I did not think that would nearly break me, 20 times in the first year. And I'm just sitting there going, dude, what are we going to do next? But all of those things also really help to like teach lessons and teach us about running a business. And, when you make a $35,000 mistake, you don't make that mistake again. And especially when in the beginning, like it's everything you have or whatever. And we made a couple of those, and that's part of running a business, and that's figuring shit out and learning from your mistakes and just trying to grow.
Dude, I feel like having that strong why that's got to be the only thing that gets you through some of those moments. Like from reading, I just read like Steve Jobs' biography. Yeah. Have you read it?
I haven't.
Dude, it's so good. I'm like obsessed with Steve Jobs right now. But it's so good because it's like any business, like, I mean, Tesla's another good example. Like they've been almost bankrupt like 9 times or something crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like the only businesses that really survive. Every business is going to go through that, but the only ones that survive are the ones that can keep pushing through all those moments where it's like, if you don't have that strong enough why behind it, you're going to break and you're just going to throw the towel in and be like, I'll try something else.
For sure. I mean, dude, me and Alex both burned through all of our savings when we were not paying ourselves so that we could live and pay our bills and all that stuff, and still trying to like have a normal life and like enjoy anything, here and there that we could, and still like go out to eat with my wife and like just like small stuff, which at the time was like, dude, we're getting close here. Dang. And just realizing too that like, when you start a business, everybody gets paid before you do. And if you're not committed to that, and if you are not okay with that, and your why doesn't support that, that's going to be real hard for you to do. It's going to be real hard for you to, see that you've got, $20,000 in the business bank account, and you've got $15,000 worth of payroll that has to come out, and you need to leave some cash in there for operating expenses. It's like, I'm not going to get paid this month. And just understanding that like, that's going to happen. And that's very real. So, that was a nice learning lesson up front.
So what year did you guys start?
We started in January of 21. So this will be our third. This is our third year. And so 21, 22, and then this is the end of the third year.
So it's still relatively new.
Yeah.
So when you guys, 10 months, so you started finally being able to pay yourself like towards the end of 2021?
Yep. And when I say, pay ourselves, like it's like, a quarter to, maybe less than what we should have been paid. It was just a couple $1,000s here and there in a month. And it was, it was a wake up call. It was realizing like, dude, I just had to keep telling myself like, this is going to be worth it. You got to trust the process. You have to lean into this. And then, there were a couple times I would just be sitting upstairs, like about to go to sleep. My wife's sitting there too. And I'm just like, I don't know what we're going to do next. Like we're getting close on not being able to support payroll. It is, we need this invoice to come in. Like we've got all these things. Like, dude, just the feeling and the pressure of that when you realize that like you are paying people, and that's how they're paying their mortgage and feeding their families. And it is on me to make sure that we're getting another contract and closing the next contract and going out and getting more business. It was a lot. It was a lot, to say the least. And at that time, I was also, anytime I got busy, no running, no workouts, like grind. And I realized that like that was not the best me showing up to solve those problems. And now I feel like I can go into things and I step in much clearer and with a lot more presence. And I think like nobody's going to be able to start a business and do it perfectly and also have this like, you know, Zen Wusa life mindset 24/7, right? I think that shit is impossible. Yeah. And that's great to aim for, but that's just not realistic. It's going to be fucking hard, and people are going to be not happy with you sometimes. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to make bad decisions. It's learning from that stuff, and it's realizing that like this is just part of the process, and it will ultimately just galvanize you in the end and make you stronger.
Do you think all of those ups and downs and the hardships and all that shit, would you rather deal with that than like just living, you know, as like an employee for a big corporation, and just like it's probably a lot less stressful doing that as opposed to owning your own business? For sure. It is definitely a lot less stressful. You know, before I got started with everything, I was talking to one of my buddies who owns a big group out in Arizona, and they've been wildly successful over the past 7 or 8 years. His name's Joe Rodriguez. Look him up. Maybe I'll tag him. Hey. So anyway, we, you know, we're on the phone and we're talking, and this was like maybe a year before I started the business. And I was telling him, I was thinking about like, maybe I should just start my own anesthesia group. And I remember him being like, I don't know if I'd recommend that, man. Like, you're a lifestyle guy, and you and your wife like to travel and have fun. You like to wakeboard, you like to run, you like to, you know, work out. I don't know if I see you doing that. And it always makes me laugh now, because at that time I wasn't ready for it. And at that time it wouldn't have been a good situation for me. But now I would not trade it for anything. I don't think I could work for anybody else. And if I had to work for somebody else in anesthesia, I probably just wouldn't work in anesthesia anymore, and I'd start my own business doing something completely different. Do you work more now than you did when you were an employee? 100%. Yeah. Anybody that tells you like, and one thing, I saw an interview with Tim Ferriss about the 4-hour work week, like, you know, several years ago. And he was like, I just want to be clear. The 4-hour work week is the 4 hours of shit that I don't want to be doing for the business that has to be done. Yeah. It's like, I'm working a lot more than the 4 hours per week, but it's stuff that I like to do. It's stuff that's energy giving. It's stuff that is exciting me about this business. It's the creative development stuff that I like doing. So I don't think that's work. I was like, that is so true. Yeah. Like you're always on. You know, we were talking on a run the other day, and I was like, you know, it's like starting business kind of like having a baby. We don't have any kids, but from all of our friends that do have kids, it's like, as soon as you have a kid, you can't just leave town for 2 months at a time and have somebody just watch the kid 24/7, right? It's like that kid has to, you know, eat, sleep, you know, go to the bathroom. It's got to be changed. Like you got to be there supervising and monitoring the kid. Like when you start a business, like you're plugged in, man. Like there is no ski trip that year. There is no, you know, going to your friend's wedding in Cancun. Like that shit's off the docket. You're kind of in the zone. You're kind of in a cave. Like you're getting the business done, and you're starting the architecture of it, and you're doing what needs to be done to make it run. Yeah, dude. I think that's the best analogy to running a business. And I know your business is not even comparable, or like mine's not even comparable to like what yours is, but like it's just like having a kid. It's just there's always something that needs attention. For sure. Like it's literally like a kid crying at 2 a.m. That's like there's a customer that needs service, or there's an employee, or like something that always has to be done. For sure. And before you start to like back yourself out of wearing one of those hats, you're wearing every hat. Yeah. So in the beginning, you know, if something happens with the baby and you're not home, you better believe like you're getting a phone call immediately. That phone call's coming directly to you. So, you know, somebody, you know, gets stuck in the snow in Michigan at one of our sites, and it's 5 a.m. and they can't get to work. Who's getting a call at 4 a.m., you know, when that's happening, 4 a.m. Central Time,
in the beginning of the business, like it's just me and Alex. Like we're both getting calls at 4 a.m. Okay, now we've got to call 3 other people. Now we've got to call the facility. Now we've got to move cases around. Like we're already doing stuff, and I might have to go be in the OR myself in 2 hours for cases here in Austin. So it was, it was a lot, but it taught us a lot about systematizing things. It taught us a lot about like building in, insulation into protection, across the board.
Dude, I love that, man. It's I feel like it's so fulfilling too, because I feel like when you own a business, you're like you have more purpose almost. It seems like
for sure,
because you feel like you're making a bigger impact, not just on your own life and like the customer or whoever it is, but like if you have employees or it's just as a whole. I feel like so much more fulfilling. Big
time. I mean, look what you're doing with Switchback. It's like started with an idea. And then all of a sudden you've got a product, and then you're starting to develop community. Now you have a product to show for, what you're doing. You can give it to that community, and your community is benefiting from, consuming the product. It's just like, it's so cool to see that all come to fruition. And then it's cool, you as the creator of that, like, damn, like me and Brock like created this. Like, this is dope. Like this was our brainchild, and this is now happening, and it's got a label, and people are taking a scoop of this powder before they go run, and it's helping them run. Like that is just, it's so cool. And that's why I love business in general. It's like you can use your gifts and talents in a way that help people and do something bigger than you can just do on your own. And I don't know, just find it super fulfilling.
Yeah, I love that, dude. At what point did you feel like you could or needed to start like outsourcing things?
My wife would say I still need to. I think I started reading another great book called, I think it was called The Lazy CEO. Lazy CEO. There's also another book called The 80-20 Principle. Both of those speak very highly of delegation. Delegation, automate everything that you can, right? So delegation does not come easy to me at all. I am I'll just take care of it. I'll just take care of it. I'll just do it. And what you realize is like that ultimately will be like what trips you up and puts too much on your own plate and doesn't allow you to do the high leverage things that need to be done to make the business move forward. These are all like low leverage actions that could be delegated and automated. And a lot of CEOs or a lot of like operators, they're doing too much of that. And, they're working in the business rather than on the business. Yeah. And I realized probably 6 months ago that Alex and I needed to be working on the business rather than in the business. There's just the value that we bring within the business now is too low compared to the value we bring on the business, where we're working on structure, operations, scale, new contracts, business development, that kind of stuff that really makes the business grow into something bigger and better.
That's cool. That delegation is hard because especially when you've been doing it yourself for so long, like giving up that control and trusting that somebody else is going to do it the way you want it to be done. So that's one of the hardest things, I feel like.
One really cool thing that you might check out, because, a lot of your stuff is probably all online, right? Yeah. Or all, at least on your computer. I cannot remember the guy's name. It's going to really bug me. Maybe I'll shoot it to you afterwards. But there was a CEO, and he owns the company Level, which is like the wearable continuous blood glucose monitoring system. Yeah. His entire team, their whole business works asynchronously, right? So like no one is on the same meeting. They're all just communicating via Loom and via text and via email, right? And they get everything done. He said when he goes to delegate to these VAs and executive assistants, what he'll do is he will just leave a Loom on the whole time he's doing something.
What is Loom?
Loom is this video recording software that screen records.
So, I've used that. Okay.
So it'll record your face if you want, but it'll also record everything that you're doing on the computer. So it's really neat because you can just do your workflow like normal, and you could do it 5 times, and you could have 5, you can have 5 2-hour looms. But if you export that to an EA or a VA, all of a sudden they could watch that at 2 or 3x. They can get done with that, material very quickly. They can see what your workflow and your patterns are. Just be like, I want you to do these things. Send me back a message with, write out my workflow and what you would do. So now all of a sudden you just delegated and automated having to produce the workflow and create the system that you're going to, have them step into. Yeah. You're asking them to create it by watching just you working. So now you don't have to spend any time doing that. You're just recording your normal workflow.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Do you spend a lot of time, it sounds like you do, like listening to podcasts and reading books and just learning different business tactics like this?
Yeah, I mean, I think running has been my vehicle to do that, right? It forces me into, solitude and time by myself. And during that time, I'll normally throw on an Audible, audiobook. If you're looking for a sponsorship, that might be a good one.
Audible,
hello. So, Audible audiobooks, and normally, I'm listening to something business related, and then podcasts. I love Tim Ferriss and his entire platform. I think he's done a really good job interviewing and kind of honing that craft. He's a great interviewer, so nice. I like that.
Yeah, I listened to his podcast a little bit after you've recommended it.
Yeah.
I need to get back into those because I listened to several of them, and they're so good. They're just super informative. He's a great interviewer too.
Yeah, and the people that he has on are just like people that, they all kind of have something in common. They all are, very high achievers. They are all, doing something cool, creative, new in business. And they're also typically, athletes, or they have some type of like workout or fitness regimen. It's like all those things kind of go hand in hand when you start to look at all these like high performing people. Yeah,
I think the physical aspect is very common. Because like you said earlier, it allows you to like work on yourself first.
Yep.
And when you feel good mentally, physically, you can perform so much better.
100%. 100% agree.
I love that, dude. I guess we can go into the well, before that, I saw on your site you had something about like a non-opioid pain management technique.
Yeah, so
I know opioids are like such a buzzword now.
They are, yeah. So one thing that we do, so before Alex and I actually started Celebrity Anesthesia is the name of our anesthesia.
There's another question too, before we go into this. Why Celebrity Anesthesia?
So oddly enough, another podcast. So I was on a podcast called Plastic Surgery Untold. There is a physician here in Austin, plastic surgeon. He's unbelievable. He's an awesome guy. One of my good buddies, Johnny Franco, Dr. Johnny Franco. What's up? So we started this podcast, I don't know, now probably 4 or 5 years ago. And we would basically podcast about all things plastic surgery. Trends that were emerging in the market, how I would always give like the anesthesia perspective on what we were doing, talk about like how these different cases we could do anesthesia for them, whatever. Well, my wife at Your Dementia Therapist, give her a check out. Mary, she actually, before she got into the dementia space, she had another account called Your Trendy Therapist. She started this in 2012, maybe, kind of like before being a blogger or being an influencer was the thing, when it was still called being a blogger. Yeah. And she had a blogger website and everything like that. Nice. And so she used to do like fitness, fashion, travel, and just document like our life, right? And it was awesome. And that account, grew, and she amassed a little bit of a following, and she loved it. And it was cool because when we first moved back to Austin, we would get invited to everything, like any new bar opening, any new restaurant opening, hotel stuff, like every weekend. We're like, hey, Mary, like you want to come +1, like whatever. Nice. So whenever we were on the podcast, when I was on Plastic Surgery Untold, they would always call me Celebrity Husband, because I was just riding my wife's coattails all around town. We were going to new restaurants and new cool shit all the time. So that became like the running joke on the show. And then that emerged, or that morphed into Celebrity Anesthesia. So Johnny Franco started calling me Celebrity Anesthesia, and I thought that was like the perfect name for an anesthesia company. So
it makes it feel like really high class.
Yeah, that was the whole goal. I mean, and we treat every patient like they're a celebrity. And being in the plastic space, people always, oh, have you ever worked on a celebrity? My answer is simple. Like, everybody's a celebrity to us. Like, we literally just treat every patient the exact same and do the most for everybody. And then back to your non-narcotic or non-opioid technique. So one thing that Alex and I both agreed on, like wholeheartedly, before we started the business, he was working up in Chicago and I was working down here in Austin, and we were both huge on using this technique that's employed by a lot of anesthesia providers around the country called ERAS, and that stands for Early Recovery After Surgery. And it's about mitigating your use of opioids and sparing as many opioids as you can, and using other techniques like non-narcotic pain medications, like low doses of ketamine, lidocaine infusions, magnesium, using steroids, not anabolic steroids, like dexamethasone. Yeah, no one's getting juiced in the OR. And using drugs like, Precedex and like all these other awesome drugs. If our medical people that are listening to this, be like, oh, that's cool. Everybody else is just like, what are all those drugs? So we use that alphabet soup basically on every single patient and try to reduce the amount of exposure that these patients are getting to opioid medications, because opioids, sometimes they're necessary, and they're necessary in most anesthetics to relieve or mitigate some pain, but they come with nasty side effects, and not only the addiction stuff and everything like that, but just they cause constipation. They make you feel really bad. Patients just always tell me, like, I feel really groggy and like foggy when I have to take these narcotic pain medications. So we have our practice is based around utilizing those techniques and doing as many nerve blocks as possible to block pain without having to use those opioids as much.
Is that a common approach in that industry, or are you guys kind of like an outlier in that?
Yeah, I would not say that it is the most common. I think a lot of anesthesia providers, especially like newer providers, people that are more tuned into the research, they're focusing their attention on trying to be better, right? It's like, it's kind of like marathon training or marathon prep. You can run a marathon if you just do 10 weeks worth of training, you go hard on 3 days a week, you do 2 easy days, and you get to the marathon. You may run the same as the person that did 4 training runs easy and 1 hard day a week and then got to the very end. The only difference is I think the guy that did 4 easy days and 1 hard day is going to end up being in better shape and have better durability for that race, right? So you can do the same thing. I think one is optimal, right? Yeah. And that's like what we're doing. I was trying to relate it to our running audience here.
It makes perfect sense.
So I think, you can get patients through an anesthetic by using a lot of opioids. I just think there's a better, less lazy way to do it.
Just optimizing, basically.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
Dang. Do you have any, before I ask that question, I have so many questions. It's so fascinating. I know the military does it, and like police academies and stuff. Sure. It's like, they make everybody get tased, they get maced, because it's like...
No, they did not make us sit around and give each other a bunch of ketamine.
I was wondering about that. No. I was like, did you have to... Have you ever been under anesthesia?
I have not, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting. I figured that would be like a
prereq,
a prereq in school. No. Was like, you got to go under.
I think that would be a hard thing to get the universities to agree to. Like, okay, but everybody here has to do propofol, ketamine, Versed, fentanyl. No. We do not, but we have to know everything inside and out about every drug that we give. So, and it's funny, like, I have all these questions. It's like anytime we're at a dinner party or something, like, wait, don't you do anesthesia? Oh my God, my wife's best friend's girlfriend's brother's sister's mom had a problem after her spinal when she had, and I'm just like, oh my God. And then it just turns to like this question fest.
Yeah. That's so funny. Well, I don't know any other anesthesiologists. Is that right?
Yeah, anesthesiologist or nurse
CRNA.
anesthetist. Yeah,
okay.
There is CRNA. Easier. It's easier,
right? Dang. But do you have any hot takes on like the medical industry, like the health industry, without getting yourself in trouble?
Yeah, without getting myself in trouble.
Because I know it's just. I mean, my mom's a nurse, and I feel like there's so many politics and a lot of stuff. I mean, I think even like COVID kind of opened this whole can of worms into the health industry of like, there's a lot of corruption and stuff going on the inside that most people probably didn't know about.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have any hot takes that are, too out there. I think there is a better way to do things than what's being done
Yeah.
in most of the country and at most facilities. And I'm just speaking from like an anesthesia perspective at this point. And we are trying to solve that problem by bringing an innovative approach to the way we schedule, the way we handle everything. More than anything, and what our practice is founded on, is placing providers first. Because like your mom's a nurse. She would probably fall into the camp of like, this place doesn't give a shit about me. And they are worried about making money more than they're worried about, you know, taking care of me and the patient. And we were trying to flip that on its head. When we started the group, Alex and I were just like, this anesthesia group is going to be for the providers, and it is going to be about making the providers' life and experience within our business as optimal as possible.
Who would fall into the category of a provider, like a nurse or something?
CRNA or an anesthesiologist.
Okay.
So our anesthesia providers, those are the only two types of people that we even staff, right? So, or we have as working as a contractor with us. So, by putting them first, like we wanted to make scheduling easy. We wanted to make, them giving us their availability easy. We pay everybody weekly. That's a lot more work on our end, but it improves their home cash flow, and it helps them, because a lot of times when you're working 1099 or as a contractor, as a CRNA or an anesthesiologist, you're having to track down your payments. You're having to hit people up 10 times, like, hey, I was supposed to get paid. And now, we pay everybody every Wednesday. They get auto drafted.
That's
and,
cool.
We also try to really do good orientations with all these providers and get them, the actual orientations that they need at these new sites that they go to, instead of just here's the keys, punch the door pad 3, 2, 1 when you get there and enjoy your first day. It's no, we show up at the facility with them. One of our leadership team shows up, gets them oriented, introduces them to the surgeon. We're just trying to white glove service everything. And again, just always going back to, how is this serving the provider? How is this serving our anesthesia provider? And every decision that we make as an entity, we always fall back to that, because that's kind of our why. That's our North Star. That's what's really guiding the entire practice.
Dude, I love that.
Yeah, man.
And now, what's your day-to-day look like now that you're not and that grind of that first year of starting the business?
Depends on the week. I feel like we're still in the grind. But it depends on the week. Some weeks I'm a little bit more clinical or in the OR, in the operating room than I am in the office. But my time is now, I'd say probably 80 to 90% of my time is spent outside of the OR, working on the business, working in the office, making sure that, we've got tools in place. We're leveraging technology where we can. We're doing a bunch of stuff to make the business run on the back end, hiring, HR, all the stuff that's not as glamorous, not as fun. And then really trying to create systems to grow and educate our workforce and our providers and the different facilities that we work with, setting up meetings, making sure everything is going well, that kind of stuff.
That's cool. How do you, I know you've got a wife. You guys are married, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
you got a wife, you got 2 dogs.
Yep.
You got friends. You got fitness. You got a demanding job, or demanding work. How do you, I know you kind of mentioned earlier, you prioritize fitness and your personal stuff first. How do you structure everything? Do you use a calendar? How do you time block? And there's a million different ways to do it. But
funny you brought up time blocking. I actually just started really implementing time blocking, I guess maybe 3 weeks ago, and it has paid massive dividends. I'm finding all of this space within my day that before was not there. And I think it's because I was starting something, and then I'm halfway through this email, and then all of a sudden I get called, hey, this facility wants to add on a day, yada, yada, yada. Hey, this provider, we need their credentials emailed over. And I see an email come in. So I stop the email that I'm on, and I go to that email, and I'm like, oh shit, no, I got to look this up. When does this person's stuff expire? Okay, well, now I got to call our administrator. Hey, why did this person start? And all of a sudden I just felt like I was getting pulled in a million different directions, and I'm just putting out one fire after another. And when I started time blocking, now I don't go check those emails incessantly. I don't feel the need to like have my phone here constantly looking at every text that comes in. And I had to just realize, you know, there are certain emergencies that can pop up in this business. When those emergencies happen, people will contact me. Like I will get a phone call with that. We had to put a system in place like, hey, if there is ever an emergency, call this phone, call my phone directly. And that way I know, like if I'm getting a call from one of our providers or one of our managers,
Right.
boom, I stop what I'm doing and I take it. If it's something else, it can wait until that time block pops up. And then I've got 2 hours to do calls, emails, and respond to all the things that I needed to. And now that's inside of a time block. And I'm not getting pulled all these different directions. It allows me to like create space for like deep work and meaningful work instead of getting pulled in a million different directions.
Yeah, I feel like if you're not intentional with that kind of stuff, it could go downhill real fast.
Me and Alex always say, like, you know, sometimes the tail is wagging you. You got to get back in control and you got to wag the tail, right? And I think it's about being, like you said, really intentional about that time and that space you're creating.
Yeah, I like that. It's like I saw a meme of this the other day. It was like about having ADD or ADHD or something, where it was like this guy's light bulb went out, so he went into the garage to find a light bulb to replace it. But then when he was on his way to the garage, he like saw like the door handle was loose. I was like, oh, I should get a screw and fix that real quick. Then he went to go find a screw to fix the doorknob. And then on his way there, he saw like the fridge was leaking. And it was this like endless cycle of like, if you don't like, I don't even know. I guess what you did or what you just explained is like just time block, be intentional with your things. Like focus on one task. The other stuff can wait. Yep. Because otherwise you're never going to get anything done. You're like always half-assing all these things.
100%. And when you're not spending 100% of your time on that thing and attention and giving it your full presence, you're not really showing up for it. And I just finished the last book that I've read recently, which I think is the best business book I've ever read. It is called The 15 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. And one thing that it talks about a lot is like being conscious, being present in the moment, giving that moment 100% of, you know, your time and attention, and working on like high leverage things, right? So, you know, to me, that means giving that block 100% of me, right? And I don't want Travis at 60% clicking on an email, trying to figure out the problem there on the schedule that's 6 weeks away, and then responding to Bob via text and then to Sam via email. It's like, that's just 50%, 60% Travis everywhere. I want 100% during that time block. Yeah. And then when I did that and I started doing that, I realized like, shit, I'm freeing up a lot more productive time that I have at the end of the day. Now I have time to go run. Now I have time to do what I want to do.
And not only are you getting it done, but like the quality is always going to be so much better.
Absolutely.
Do you apply that to like when you're hanging out with Mary, or like when you're out for a run, or you're in the gym lifting? It's like, I'm lifting for 60 minutes. I'm not doing anything else. Do you try?
I wish. I hope to get there at some point. Me and Mary are really trying to be better and more intentional with our time with each other. Because like, you know, unfortunately, we both have our own businesses, and all of our dinner conversation and drive time conversation transitions from like, you know, fun stuff and like personal things and just us being a couple to like, oh, what should I do with this next initiative? Hey, Trav, I'm about to run this like set of ads on Facebook for my membership and all this stuff. And it's just like, we're always talking business. Yeah. And then, but at the same time, like I wouldn't trade that for anything. Cause like she is my best business partner. Alex is a great business partner too. She's my life partner, but you know, we're also in each other's corner with business, and she challenges me. She makes me think about things differently. She is also great to be able to ask, like if I write an email and it's to our entire staff and I want to convey a point, I'll ask her to read the email because she doesn't know exactly what like scheduling thing I'm talking about or vacation request I'm referring to in the email, right? But when she reads it, she'll be like, I get it, but like these two things are unclear. Yeah. Perfect. That's what I needed to hear. Like, so we work together really well in that regard. But, you know, I would like to be getting better about stuff. Now my phone rings. I'm on a run. I'm like, I got to take it. I take it. You know, sometimes I'm, yeah, tell me what's going on next. But I think that's only going to get better as I'm working these time blocks to be more specific and more geared down.
Yeah. That's we call Bree our CCO, our Chief Critique Officer, because I run everything by her. Like, and I think it helps probably in your guys' situation too, where you're both in different industries.
Yep.
She doesn't know what your like day-to-day work and everything looks like necessarily. So it's like you send her something, she has such a more objective perspective. So it's like, I don't know. I love running stuff by Brie for that same reason. It's like she doesn't know anything we're working on if I just send it to her kind of randomly. I'm like, hey, what do you think of this? She always has some critique. I'm like, oh,
that doesn't make sense. That's all I needed to know. I will be clear with this.
That's perfect. Dude, our spouses, I think, are like the best built-in. What's the word?
Filter.
Yeah, filter. That's a good way to put it.
Absolutely.
I love that, man. Yeah. Do you guys have like date nights that you do, or like how do you? I know you're working on it. You said, like, how do you try to implement more intentionality? Because that's something Bree and I always work on. I know, like, most couples are always working on that too, especially with fucking phones. It's like, dude, it's so hard to
like
not be on it.
Everybody has access to you 24/7, and to that, like, my wife, she runs basically a consulting and coaching business, so her clients have to have access to her, basically at all times, and she gets email requests, and she also sells products and deliverables. So when something doesn't work, it's like, oh, hold on, I got to take this. Somebody just emailed me. They can't get into the attachment that was sent. I got to take care of this now. I'm like, I get it. And, I think the biggest thing for us is like, we're trying to go in the right direction with creating that space, but also having that understanding with each other that like, this is just part of the grind, and really understanding like when she has to take something or do something, I just go, that's okay. Like, it's all good. I understand because I'm there too. Right. And man, that reminds me, one of the doctor that I go to for acupuncture, her name is Jenna Valentine. If you're looking for somebody good and you're in the Austin area, Dr. Jenna Valentine, she's fantastic. Go to her for acupuncture, and she had something written on her arm the other day that I thought was awesome. And it said, that too is me. Or that is me too, one of the two. But anyway, basically saying that you can see yourself in everyone in any situation. Her example when I was talking to her was like the guy bagging groceries at the store. It's taken a long time. It's like you've been new at something too. And putting yourself back there and realizing like you're frustrated, but really that's you too. And that was you 5 years ago. That was you 2 weeks ago when you were doing something you never done before. Right. And, so when stuff pops up like that with Mary, I just have to go back and remind myself, like, that's me too. Like that's me too. Sometimes I need to take that call outside and walk out of the restaurant and put out the fire. And we just have that understanding. And I think when things start to drift a little bit and that happens too much, she totally calls my bullshit and like, hey, you're working too much this week. Like, let's create some space. And like Thursday night, do not make plans. What time can you be done? Like 4? Oh, okay. Then you're done at 4. We're going to happy hour. Like, let's have that night for us. And we do. So
I like that.
That's you just got, I think, encourage your partner to like call you on it and to keep you honest and present with where that's going.
Yeah, that work-life balance is tough, but at the same time, Alex Hormozy, right?
Oh, yeah.
I saw a video of him a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about like people always give him shit that like his whole life is just work. He just makes content and he works on his business, like, and he lifts, like that's all he does. He doesn't like garden. He doesn't read a lot of books. He doesn't like go to the mall, whatever like hobbies a lot of people have. He's like, he doesn't have those. And he's like, I don't care because I like working. It's like people, I think, put too much emphasis on like a work-life balance sometimes, where it's like, oh, you have to go and have all these hobbies and you have to go like do this leisurely thing all the time. But like, if that's not what you like, if you like working, it's like, why not just do what you like?
I think it's all about like, does that bring you joy?
Yeah.
If working, Hormozy's, dude's killing it. Obviously, he's awesome. He's got some really good stuff out there and produces great content. But like, for him, if he enjoys that and that brings him joy, right? And I think he also probably really enjoys helping people. At the root of everything that he's doing, right? He likes business. He likes sales. He likes doing all those things. I think behind all of that, he probably is very altruistic. really likes helping people, very benevolent, right? So if that's really what his purpose is, and that's being served by him working, then that probably brings him more joy than anything. Yeah. And for some people, it's spending time with their kids. For some people, it's, being able to travel 6 months out of the year. So for them, the work is not bringing them joy. It's that travel. It's that time away from work that's bringing them joy. So I think whatever is bringing you joy, double down on that. Right. Find a way to make that what you're doing.
Dude, that's the secret to life, I think.
Right?
Just do more of what you like doing.
Dude, just that simple. Just that simple.
Dude, let's end this right there. I love that, man. What's the ultimate goal for Travis? Like,
oh, dude.
The $1 million question.
Yeah.
Maybe like 10 year, 20, 30 year down the line, however far ahead you want to go. Like, what is the thing that you really want to achieve?
In 30 years, I might be dead. I'm 10 years older than you.
Oh my God.
No, we always joke, me and Jerry, when we're running, I always tell him that I'm with the young buck because this dude's running like 6-minute miles and I'm just like gasping for air behind him.
You are in the prime of your endurance career.
I am. I just don't have the times to back it up.
A good or a bad thing or not.
Right. Man, what is the goal ultimately? I mean, I think the goal ultimately is to be living, as my authentic self and doing the things that bring me joy. And, I love being outside. I love, spending time with my wife and our dogs and being able to create things. And I think like what this business has showed me the most is like, I don't always think about it like work. And I think that's like kind of like Hormozy's saying, like, if I took a conference call the other day with a big insurance company and it was super productive. And I felt like I was in my element. I was negotiating. I was talking to these people. I was presenting our business. I was talking about what we're doing to change the game and like how we are rewriting how anesthesia is delivered. And I walked out of that call, or I got out of that call, and I just thought to myself, like, damn, like this is what I'm meant to be doing. Like I had a lot of fun doing that. Like that brought me joy. Like I enjoyed what I was doing. I didn't see that as work. So, it's spending more time doing things that make me full of joy and make me excited, right? And do things that are energy giving instead of doing things that are energy draining. And to have more freedom and more freedom and autonomy with my schedule, to continue to make an impact for CRNAs across the U.S. and anesthesia providers in general, and just, create more access to care and to do good things with the business. And I think if we're hitting on, most of those things, dude, I'm going to be super happy.
I love that, dude. Well, it seems like you're on the right track.
Trying to, man. Trying to. One foot in front of the other. That's all we can do.
Now, my last question is, when are you going to run another race?
Dude, you and everybody else. I don't know. I might do the 3M half.
Ooh.
You want to do it?
I'm thinking about it.
All right. If you're in, I'm in.
Okay.
All right. Y'all heard it right here, right now.
Lock it in.
We just committed to this arbitrary race in, I think, a month and a half. So.
Have you done that one before?
I haven't. No.
I've heard it's fun. It's net downhill, right?
I hope so. I'm banking on that.
I think it's pretty fast.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it. All right. Last thing. Where can people find you, connect with you if they want to reach out?
Yeah. Celebrity Anesthesia. All one word on Instagram. Shoot me a DM.
Beautiful. All right, dude. Thanks for coming on. This is fun. Let's go plunge. This was fun. Get a lift in.
I'm in. Let's go.
Show the young buck how it's done.
That's right.
All right. We'll see you later.
Thanks for having me, man.
Boom. Thank you so much for tuning into the show. If you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a review, and share it with a friend.